to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. I've been doing this podcast since September of 2012, and boy, are my lips tired. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. And our friend Jody Lynn can't join us today. She's got a business issue she's trying to iron out that kind of popped up at the last minute. So we'll be seeing her again next week. But I am joined today by a special guest named Melissa Tohlakai, who she helps women navigate menopause, but she does it using natural approaches that aren't usually the ones that are proposed by, what shall we call it, mainstream medicine. And we're going to learn more about that today. She's living here in the U.S., but originally from down under, and you'll hear it as soon as you hear her voice. It's got that mellifluous Australian accent. But Melissa, thank you for joining me today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Walt. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm glad to have you here, and thank you for taking the time to join us. So tell us a little bit about how you got into this in the first place. This is kind of an unusual career path. How did you end up on this particular one?
It was a really winding road, actually. I was quite ill when I was young. In my teens, I had all sorts of female problems, which my doctor told me were normal. But put me on meds anyway for them to control the pain, to control all of that. I was struggling with anxiety and depression and crippling migraines that really were destroying my quality of life. So I was on this cocktail of medications. And some of those medications that they had me on hadn't even been tested in teenagers. Wow. And were later, they later found out that they caused suicidal ideation, some of the ones they had me on. And so I went down a pretty slippery slope.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah, and back then I was studying horse husbandry. I had no intention of helping people. I wanted to help animals.
But at some point you went from
but the universe had another. Yeah, so the universe had a whole other idea about that, and I bought a pony for my daughter, and he became very, very ill. And he was the one that sparked my interest in natural medicine, because conventional medicine, shall we call it, was literally killing him, much as it did to me.
Wow.
So I found holistic vets, and it just sparked something in me, and I went to study natural medicine, nutrition, naturopathy, herbalism. I couldn't get enough. And that's what brought me into treating the two-leggeds.
Okay. All right. Well, it's like you said, it's very clear. The universe was giving you a message. They were saying, okay, she still hasn't quite gone in the direction that we know is right for her. We're going to give her another push with the pony.
Oh, it gave me a big push at the heartstrings. I mean, I was going to do everything I could to save him. And in the end, I couldn't. I mean, the damage was done. But he showed me what I'm meant to do. And I can tell you, the day I started practicing, it was feeling of coming home. It really was. It's a powerful feeling when you're doing the thing you're meant to do.
Yeah, there's always a very strong resonance that comes through with something like that.
It is. It's almost like whenever I'm with my clients, I feel like I'm more alive. That there's an energy flowing through that's not just mine, and it's amazing.
So give us some clues about what you've learned in this part of your journey, where you've been trying to figure out what are the non-mainstream medicine alternatives.
I've learned an awful lot, and I have to say my clients are my greatest teachers. So always listen to them, because they know what's wrong. They might not always have the words for it, but they know inside what's wrong. So we have to really listen and honor the person that's trusted us with their health. And they've taught me great patience, compassion, and more than anything, to persevere and to look really deep for the answers. And I've spent 10 years doing that with women, and from that devised my own method of approaching menopause that is quite different from the mainstream, but really designed to build them up, and see this as a wonderful opportunity in our life, almost like a rebirth in many ways, rather than an ending. You know, we're not dried up and washed out.
Mm-hmm.
We're changing gears.
There you go.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, that's a great. I mean, anytime that we can flip something around and look at it from a point of view that says this is what we like rather than this is what we dislike, we're turning it into something powerful. That's just going to be the nature of it because we're raising the vibration.
Exactly, and really that's the most powerful part of doing this is raising the vibration, raising the internal power of a person when they realize that there's so much they can do for themselves, and that they're not a victim, they're not a passenger, they're an active participant in creating something that can be quite beautiful, rather than seeing it as daunting and horrible. And yes, some of the symptoms are quite distressing, but we can overcome them naturally. And to have discovered that and be able to share that is a wonderful, wonderful thing. And to see the light come back in people's eyes when they realize that they have choices.
It's kind of an odd thing, isn't it? Because we live in the information age. This is the 21st century internet information age. And yet, despite the fact that we live in the information age, so often people lack information, which is really a very strange thing. I mean, it's not like it's not out there. It's just that they don't necessarily find it. They aren't aware of that particular piece that they're looking for.
You hit the nail on the head. I mean, there is so much there, yet they don't know about it. And to be fair, doctors really, I think that the statistic is something like 85% of physicians are not trained in the perimenopause transition. They really don't understand what's going on, other than, oh, well, your progesterone's going down and your estrogen's going down, so, you know, here's some HRT hormone replacement, or here's an antidepressant and all will be well. Well, it's far more complex than that. And for some women it's very helpful, but for others it makes it worse. And this is where that really individualized approach is so critical for success. And just, you know, so it's not the doctor's fault. They really don't know what's out there. And to be fair, how do they have time to study all of that on top of what they have to keep up with in the pharmaceutical field? I mean, I don't envy them at all.
I hear you. Yeah. And to be fair, also, there are doctors who do go out of their way. I mean, we've had some on the show, not necessarily on this particular topic, but doctors who have, you know, explored alternatives in their own field because they came to the conclusion that what they were taught in their own field wasn't doing it. It wasn't cutting it. They needed to find something better.
Yeah, and I take my hats off to them, because, you know, they're sticking their necks out when they do that.
Oh, yeah.
The establishment does not like that at all, right? So they have a lot of courage to do that and to say, well, sure, that's what I was taught, but hey, maybe there's more. And we know there is. So I applaud them. You know, some of them have been an enormous inspiration to me. For all of those reasons, and there are more coming. I have many contacts and friends who are in the medical field, but from a holistic or functional perspective. So the tide is turning.
It is. I totally agree. Yeah, and it kind of had to. I think what's happened overall, now not talking just with menopause and perimenopause, but just in general across the whole landscape, I think what's happening is that the medical industry, the mainstream medical industry, has already reached a crisis point, and they haven't quite figured that out yet. And that crisis point basically makes it impossible for it to continue the way it's continued. And so what we're going to be watching over the next few years is how that kind of crumbles a bit and how it kind of falls apart and then evolves into something new. I think that's what we're seeing with the emergence of the holistic fields and the alternative fields. I think we're also just seeing it scientifically. Science itself is recognizing its own limitations right now.
Yeah, and I think in some ways the science is finally starting to catch up with what we've known from a traditional perspective for thousands of years. It's starting to back us up and prove it, but it's sure taking its sweet time. And and hey, there's no money in proving that, is there?
Not so far. No, that may actually shift as well, just because whenever you shift economic demand, stuff catches up to it. It's just a question of how it's going to catch up to it, and we're still in the midst of that process. So we don't know how it's going to iron out just yet. But it will. It has to. It can't do anything else but. It has to.
That's it. There's such a turning and growing of consciousness around what we're capable and what our body can do if we give it the right conditions, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. If we create the right environment around ourselves, then magic happens. It truly does.
And that's where
we see things that, and
that's where the information comes in too.
I can't explain that.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Oh, no, God, how many times have I heard that story, including directly with myself or with members of my family? I'm also thinking I had a phone conversation with I won't name the company, but it's a major software as a service type company. So you hook into their website and you use whatever their service is. And I was needing some technical support, so I called them up. And I ended up talking to this really nice gentleman who works from his home, as so many people are doing today. He provides customer service as a remote worker. And he helped me out with the problem. It was a complex problem, and we worked through it. He did a really nice job helping with that. And then at one point, he was waiting for his upline people, not upline, but his superiors to iron some stuff out. And so we were just chatting. And during the chat, I learned that he was a veteran, that he had had some serious health issues of his own that, among other things, led to a loss of a leg. He was dealing with diabetes. And I'm hearing all this stuff, and I'm saying, well, in the context of the conversation we were having, because I was explaining law of attraction to him, he didn't know the concept law of attraction, but he had a Christian background. So I said, well, it's sowing and reaping. Just think sowing and reaping. It's kind of an expanded version of that. He says, oh, okay, I get that. So we're talking about that. And it occurred to me, he's probably never heard of Dr. Joe Dispenza. He's probably never heard of Dr. Bruce Lipton. He's probably never heard of all these things. And so I started asking him. He said, no, I've never heard of all that. So I'm giving him all these links and informations and so forth. And he was getting so excited. And it just kind of reinforced to me what we're talking about right here. He just didn't even know about it. He had no context to talk about it because it had never been presented to him before.
It's sad.
And it's happy at the same time.
Yeah, because you open someone's eyes.
Yeah. Well, he opened his own eyes. I fed him the material, but he opened his own eyes, really. I mean, I didn't have to say a whole lot. It's kind of cool, really. And I think I get the sense that's what your business is too. That when you're dealing with your clients, that's what you're doing a lot, isn't it?
Yeah. So much of it is simply education. People say, oh, Melissa, you're a healer. And I'm like, well, no, actually, I really act like a matchmaker between the medicines, the plants, the nutrients, and the person. The magic happens when you put the right ones together. The plants, the nutrients, and the person do the healing, not me. And to see them when things start to work, and with simple changes sometimes, and the lights come on and they become alive. It's like, I can do this.
Yeah.
And I always say to them, my job is to put myself out of a job. When you don't need me, I've done it right.
Yeah, I hear you. That's a great attitude too. I love that attitude.
yeah, I'm not here to create dependence. I'm here to help people literally become their own healers. You know, we used to do it for centuries, for thousands of years, and it all got pushed aside and lost, and we need to bring it back, and it's coming back.
So let's zero in a bit on your particular field, because you picked up some, I'm sure, some very cool stuff along the way. Touch on a few pieces that I'm sure there are probably women listening in to the podcast right now who are going through either perimenopause or menopause. They probably could use a, a tidbit or two, a little trick or something along that line. Give us some ideas.
For sure. Number one of the most powerful things you can do to help reduce the symptoms is to cut out the sugar. We all know it's inflammatory, and something as simple as, getting those processed and refined sugars and carbohydrates out, the hot flashes start to ease off dramatically. And we haven't put in a medication. I haven't given them a pill or a herb. They've just removed something from their diet that was literally setting them on fire. So I always say, start with your diet. That's your groundwork. And if you don't do that, nothing I put on top's really going to have a lasting effect. So let's get to the bottom of it. Fix what goes in. So number one is get that sugar out. Get out those refined things that are literally creating inflammation and disorganization within the body. And the second thing I ask them to take out is alcohol. And that can give me some very cranky looks from women
I imagine,
at this point of life. Because often they get to 5 o'clock and they have had it.
Yeah.
And they just, we call it wine o'clock. That they want their glass of wine at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I'm taking it away.
Yeah, how dare you? Yep, that's a tough one.
But if they can do that for themselves, they will see a remarkable lessening of their symptoms just on those two things alone. And something that people often mistake with alcohol is that it helps them sleep. Alcohol is a depressant. It helps you get to sleep, but then it creates so much stress in the liver that you'll find yourself waking up at 3 a.m. because the body's trying to get it out. So it then breaks your sleep. So it's this false security blanket that people often have with it. And it takes a bit of education and a bit of weaning them off it, but we get there.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what kinds of alternatives you could do. I know sugar. There are a number of different sugar alternatives with varying degrees of safety associated with them.
Yeah.
So that at least gives people a way to go about getting off of sugar. Alcohol is not quite the same thing. You don't really have a good alternative. I wish there was a way.
With
I mean, my alternative is I just stopped drinking when I was in my 20s, but I mean that's not for everybody, So
I don't know. See, I've never been a drinker. It's never agreed with me, so I've never had to go through that. But if someone took away my chocolate, oh my goodness, there'd be a riot.
It's not so dissimilar, actually. Yeah, because what really, I mean, any of these things are essentially at the bottom line, at the end of the day, they're pain relievers. There's some way to deal with the various kinds of mental, emotional, and physical pain that we have to deal with on a fairly regular basis. That's why we need or feel that we need something like alcohol. And the real question is, how are we going to find an alternative way to either mask or deal with that pain? That's what the real challenge is. Oh no, I see a frozen image. I hope I haven't lost the connection with Melissa. We'll give her a moment to try to connect. Yeah, Sherry in the live stream, meditation is a good alternative. That's a good point. I'll bring that up with Melissa when she's able to get the internet problem solved at her. And she was experiencing some issues before we got started. She actually has, I think she said she has 2 different internet sources. So she's probably connecting. Now I see some motion there. Are you back there?
I'm back.
Okay.
I'm back like the Terminator.
So Sherry in the live stream made a comment. I wanted you to comment on as well. She says meditation is a good alternative. Talk about the role that meditation can play.
Sorry, can you just repeat that little last bit there? The role that.
Yeah, just talk a little bit about the role that meditation can play in dealing with menopause and perimenopausal symptoms. Did I lose you? You're moving, but can you hear me? I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me? Oh, no.
Can't hear. I can hear you now. You're back now.
Okay. Should I try a third time?
Someone was asking about the role.
I was just asking, she was asking about meditation as an alternative method for dealing with menopause and perimenopause. And I was asking you to just comment on that. What role can meditation play?
Well, it's a personal thing. And as I always say to women, it's your body, it's your choice. There's a number of options available medically. Now, I'm not a medical doctor, so I will give you my understanding of it. Mm-hmm. So hormone replacement therapy is the main one. There has been a lot of advances in it in the past 5-10 years with bioidentical hormone therapy. And that has allowed, to be fair, it's still a medication. It is not natural as some are prescribed saying that it is, but it's allowing for a much more individual approach, a much more customized compounding of the hormones. So while it's not natural, it's women are finding that one much easier to tolerate, and especially for women that have had surgically induced menopause, if they've had a hysterectomy and had their ovaries removed, that is a very real option they need to consider, because to be thrown straight into full-blown menopause, naturally I can't put something in that's going to compensate for that completely. And in those cases, medication can be quite advisable, especially if they're young. So it really is horses for courses, and seeing what's right for the individual woman.
I wanted to just interject something. I wanted to let you go there because what you were saying was important. The question was actually about meditation, as in sitting down and meditating rather than
meditation, not medication. There you go.
Very similar sounds.
Meditation, I think, is brilliant. Anything that brings down our stress hormones, and cortisol plays a massive role in menopausal symptoms. Huge. So cortisol is one of our stress hormones, and it is a big player in menopausal weight gain, a big player in the hot flashes, and that we produce more of it when we're stressed. So if we can meditate and calm ourselves and get that vagus nerve working, then our cortisol levels are coming down, and we are absolutely going to feel a reduction in symptoms. So it's perfect. I encourage women to meditate, whether it's sitting there and meditating. For me, I can't sit still. So my form of meditation is to go for a walk.
Oh, I love walking meditations. That's my favorite.
Yeah, exactly. Connecting to the earth with each footstep, and just imagining those roots growing from my feet every time I put my feet down. That walking meditation is what I connect with, or gardening. It could be something as simple as anything repetitive that you don't have to think about. Yeah. Needlework, knitting, crochet, all those things, where you're repeating an action, and the mind, you can just let it go. Mm-hmm. So I encourage women to think that there are many, many different ways we can meditate, and it doesn't have to be sitting still, and because it's very easy to become frustrated with that, especially when you're learning.
Oh, absolutely. I can totally, I don't obviously have any situation with menopause going on for, hopefully I don't. I would imagine I wouldn't. But I also have, like anybody else, I have plenty of other things to stress about. And I totally agree about low thought activity stuff. I mean, my favorite one is just doing dishes. When I'm doing dishes,
Yeah.
I can de-stress on almost anything. And I remember the first time that someone suggested to me that you could do a walking meditation. It was a breath of relief, because I was like you. Up to that point, I was thinking, I mean, I can't clear my mind. They keep telling me to clear my mind. I can't clear the mind. It just keeps coming back. But
Yeah.
when I found out that walking meditation counted, that you could actually count that as a form of meditation, I said, well, I know how to do that one. I can do that one easily. That
That's
made it so
it.
much easier.
Yeah, just to find something that we connect with, that we can do, and that takes the pressure off, right?
Takes a lot of pressure off.
Yeah.
Literally. It takes the pressure off the thing you're dealing with, and it takes the pressure off the meditation. It does both.
And you know, when we're trying to learn something new, we're so wrapped up in trying to get it right,
Yeah.
and do it the right way. And it's like, oh, this isn't happening, and I'm doing it wrong, and I'm a failure at this, and it's all counterproductive. So, you know, let's broaden the picture here and look at different ways of clearing the mind. And there are many, many of them.
Do you have other favorites?
Well, I'm also an artist, so for me, it's painting. But my favorite is just to be outside, whether it's walking, gardening, or just being with my animals. Sit with a dog, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
And just cuddle a dog. That's going to bring down your heart rate and your stress levels. Animals are such brilliant therapy and teachers.
A good friend of mine, who was a former co-host on the show, once mentioned to me that numerous scientific studies have demonstrated that the great value that pets have in our lives is that they help people stay on whatever their course of treatment is that they're dealing with, for whatever medical situation they're dealing with, because just the act of taking care of an animal reinforces taking care of themselves.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I think they're such a gift to us because they help us be present. They bring us into the moment. And the Institute of Heart Maths did some really great studies on people and dogs, and the heart rate variability matching the person and the dog, matching each other. I mean,
that's pretty wild.
Powerful stuff.
It is. It really is. It also shows how interconnected everything is too, which is, I think, kind of fun.
Oh yeah, definitely. You know, you can't separate yourself and think that we're our own little island amongst everything. It's just not the case.
Well, you can, but it's self-destructive. I mean, I believe me, I did that for years. I'm really good at it. If I really wanted to go back there, I could. But you also cut yourself off at the knees when you do that.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that for a long time. You know, once I actually decided to give this crazy woo-woo stuff a try, my life got a whole lot better because I was no longer cutting that kind of thing off. And yeah, it's almost indescribable how important that is.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. So, okay, so we're going to do our best to cut out sugars. We're going to do our best to eliminate the alcohol. What else can we do if we're dealing with these menopausal type issues?
Well, going back to that walking, there was a really interesting study done a few years ago. I think it was in Iran. And the only thing they changed in this study, they had one group of women who didn't walk and one group who did. And at the end, I think it went for a few months. And at the end of it, the women who were walking every day showed a decrease in every single one of their menopausal symptoms.
Wow.
Every one of them. Now, it doesn't mean they're going to go away, but just to reduce something that's distressing by walking.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, I'll take that one on if I'm dealing with something like that. Absolutely.
Yeah. The other thing is, you know, coffee. If you have to have a coffee, have it first thing in the morning. Cortisol shoots up when you drink your coffee. Now, it should be high in the morning anyway, because that's what wakes us up and gets us out of bed. It's that the foot up the backside says, come on, it's morning, out of bed, let's go.
Here I thought it was my cat that was getting me up, so it's nice to know.
Or excuse me, in my case, 2 dogs.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
But yeah, so our cortisol is naturally high in the morning. So if you have to have a cup of coffee, that's the time to have it. Please, ladies, try and avoid it in the afternoon because it's going to heat you up. And that's when we want the cortisol to go down so our melatonin, our sleep hormone, can start going up. Because they don't get along too well, those two. It's a seesaw. So drop the coffee in the afternoon so the melatonin can start coming up and get you ready for bed. And you won't feel so jittery, hopefully.
That alone, I'm sure, is going to be helpful. Just getting rid of the jitters. Because when you feel jittery, I mean, everything just kind of falls apart at that point. I don't care what you're dealing with.
Exactly. And the interesting thing with menopause is women often for the first time in their lives will start feeling depressed and anxious if they're one of the lucky ones that haven't experienced it in a big way before. It will happen then. And that's because when progesterone goes down, we have less GABA, which is one of our calming hormones going on. And we end up with more glutamate, which makes us do this. So there's one of the things that happens. So the drop in progesterone means we start to get anxious and jittery. Mm-hmm. And then the drop in estrogen, although it kind of does this before everything, it has a real party going up and down before things finish. And that's what creates a lot of the symptoms. But the estrogen is what contributes to a great sense of depression because of its effect on serotonin. So it is very natural for women to suddenly feel they don't feel like themselves anymore. Their mood's completely changed and they're lost as to why. And it can be a very lonely and isolating time. And especially because our mothers didn't talk about this much. So we come in quite uneducated socially about this. That's why I'm trying to change the conversation and get this out there so that women know this is actually normal. So getting back to that coffee, if we can get rid of things like that, which are worsening these symptoms, you're well on your way. You're really well on your way. And all we've done is so far we've taken out some sugar, some caffeine and some alcohol, and we haven't put anything expensive into our bodies. Oh, and we're going for a walk too, and that doesn't cost a whole lot.
Fairly simple solutions at this point.
There are many, many basic things we can do for ourselves without handing over our money and our health to someone else. Empower yourself and find out.
I find it fascinating what you're describing for a number of reasons, not the least of which I'm recently divorced. But when I was still married, my ex-wife went through menopause, and I never drew a direct connection, probably because I wasn't experiencing it directly. I was only experiencing it vicariously. But as I look back, I realized we were also going through a period where I was trying to get both her and me on lower levels of sugar for different reasons, having nothing to do with menopause. And it was a struggle because she was, and to this day really is, pretty strongly addicted to the sweetness of sugar. Although I have to also give her credit because she has done quite a bit to shift her own diet in that way. And that's really pointing toward what my point is here, because if I look back over time, especially over those few years where she was dealing with all of this, we were very slowly reducing the amount of sugar. And if I'm honest about it, I think I can actually see where the curve in her menopausal symptoms occurred, and that they were in relation to the sugar. So when you said the sugar, I said, Yeah, that actually makes sense. That fits what I remember of the experience that she went through.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing how one thing can have such a profound effect on our health.
Mm.
And it frustrates me no end that it's so ubiquitous in the food supply here in the US. Moving from Australia to the US, and everything's sweetened. Everything has
Oh,
sugar
yeah.
in it.
Oof.
And my mind was totally blown because I was someone that really didn't eat sugar. Well, natural sugars. I enjoy coconut sugar.
Mhm.
It's gentle on the blood sugar. But I don't know how long I'd spend in the supermarket reading every single label, and it was all high fructose corn syrup, and
Oh, yeah.
there could be 5 different types of hidden sugars in a product, and
Mm.
unless you have a background in nutrition or chemistry, you don't know how to read those labels, and you don't realize what's going in your body. I mean, it's like a science experiment. And the food industry has literally hooked us all on a food-like substance, I wouldn't call it food, that is every bit as addictive as opioids.
It's a great point. Yeah. It's a very
And
great point.
and it makes us sick, and it makes the pharmaceutical companies a lot of money.
Yeah, that dynamic seems to pop up all over the place. Here it is
Doesn't
again,
it?
now with sugar. The profitability of making people miserable. Yeah.
Yes. And keeping them in the loop,
Mhm.
around and around like rats on a treadmill,
Mhm.
desperately trying to get better, desperately trusting that that pill we're being given is going to solve it, when in reality we end up on more pills. And that was me as a teenager. And I don't wish it on anyone. It's really become my mission to educate people about that and their options.
Well, this is kind of leading, in my mind, toward what I consider to be the ultimate topic. I say that because it comes up in every conversation with every guest that I have. And that the way I'm going to segue to it is through my ex-wife. Like I said, she was very, very heavily addicted to sugar. There was so much sugar in our diet. I was becoming addicted. I could tell, I could feel it. And I was actually pushing, like, we got to cut down on the sugar. We kept trying to find different ways to do that. And very slowly over time, we managed to do that. One of the best things that happened out of the divorce is that I've almost entirely eliminated sugar from my diet. And I love that part. That's the good part.
That's huge.
That's a really big part. I lost weight out of it. I mean, it's great. But it is a challenge. It's a challenge to do that. And one of the key elements that we found, that I found certainly with my ex-wife, and I think most people ultimately have to come to terms with one way or another when dealing with something as powerful as sugar, is mindset. Because
Yeah.
you have to develop the mindset that you're going to change, and then you actually have to follow through on that change. So mindset is always a big topic around here. It's a huge
Yeah.
topic because it touches everything. So take a moment and talk about mindset in relation to the menopausal woman, and in relation to the alternatives that are associated with menopause and perimenopause.
Mindset is everything. Too many women are coming into menopause and have been heavily influenced by the media, thinking it's all over. I'm washed up. I got wrinkles. So I must need some Botox, and I need to dye my hair because I'm going grey. The whole media thing has improved, but I remember, not so long ago when we didn't see mature women on the screen.
Oh yeah.
They suddenly disappeared.
Mm.
And even in movies, they were putting makeup and prosthetics on younger women to appear older, rather
Yeah.
than using mature actresses. And
Yeah.
so where'd they all go? I want to see that life experience on someone's face.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there is anything more beautiful than a woman who is aging naturally, and I can see the lines and that gorgeous silver hair, and I look up to that. To me, it's a sign of confidence and grace, and it doesn't mean everyone has to do it that way, but it's just something I have a lot of admiration for, because they are owning it. You know, they're like, this is me and I'm good in my skin, and we can all take something from that. And in traditional, especially Indigenous cultures, as women age and go into their crone years, they take on the wise woman role. And they are esteemed for their knowledge. You know, I'm married into the Navajo tribe, and it's matriarchal. And the women hold so much knowledge of healing, of medicine, of where to find the plants. And I know some cultures, when the younger women give birth, the grandmothers take care of the kids, the mothers go out and do the gathering and so on, and the grandmothers play a really huge role in raising those children and passing on that knowledge. And we need to bring that back. So we need to realize, and in the way we approach this, is that we are literally going into our power years. And this is not an ending. Like I said earlier, this is just simply a changing of gears and opening up just a new phase of life where we have so much to give and contribute and share. And we need to value ourselves a whole lot more, and really rise up and own what we have to offer, and be good with our bodies, be kind to ourselves, and stop. We don't need to look like we're 20 or 30 anymore. As I said, I think a woman who really owns the aging process is an extraordinarily beautiful thing. And if we can have that confidence in ourselves, then we will also pass that on to our daughters and granddaughters, and we can shift the perceptions around this as we go along. But yeah, turn off the TV, guys.
Well, it's usually a good idea anyway, under any circumstances.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't have one for that very reason.
There's a very good reason why it's called a boob tube, and you know, just you don't want to be a
The
boob.
idiot box.
The idiot box, yeah. So you made an excellent case for how the sort of the cultural mind shift needs to happen. Let's talk about the individual mind shift too. Because even, you know, in the face of all that media and television and all that stuff, it can still be a real challenge to make that mind shift. So you get a client who comes to you, and you're trying to help her in a variety of ways along the lines we've been talking about here. But then you run into that mindset piece. How do you help somebody shift their mindset?
Slowly.
Slowly, yeah.
In little increments. I have to admit, I use flower essences a lot in my practice, which are, I don't know if you're aware of them, but they work on an energetic level and they work on the emotions. So if I see someone that's very, very stuck in a particular negative mindset, I will use the flower essences to help start to move that and release it, so that they can let go of it and open up to new possibilities and different ways of seeing things, because it's very, very easy to get stuck into the victim mindset. And I've done it, you know. I've fallen
we've
down
all done it. I mean, is there
Yeah.
anybody on the face of the earth who hasn't? Let's be honest.
Well, that's it. And so, yeah, I'm happy to own that. But the trick is, we need to recognize those thoughts, because until we recognize them, we can't change them. So sometimes it's this process of bringing them up with the right questions and just gently bringing that to the surface so that someone is aware of it. So that once it's in their awareness, we say, okay, how can we look at this differently? What little thing can we change and work on today that's going to start moving that in a positive direction?
Yeah. How can we look at it differently? That's a key phrase right there.
Yeah. It's like turn it around, look at it from different angles, because there's always going to be a different perspective we can take. But sometimes you just need someone as a guide to help you see that and get you out of that tunnel vision of it's all happening to me and the world's against me and I can't fix this. Well, we can do little things every day to fix it. And for some people, the change happens fast, and for others, it's a very slow and subtle process. But the point is, it happens.
That's really the key. That's the most important part right there. As long as you're making progress, that's the important thing. Like you say, it's going to happen at a different rate for everybody because everybody's letting go of these resistance points in different ways, different speeds, different degrees. And that's okay. That's part of who we are as human beings. That's fine. I like to remember, not just with a topic like this, but with any topic where we're talking about changing mindset, shifting mindset. I like to remember basic law of attraction teaching, which is if you want to change your experience, you have to change the way you think about things. And if you're having trouble changing the way you're thinking about something, you basically need to do what you just said. You turn it around. You look at it from a different perspective. You flip it. You find a way to rephrase, change the wording, change so that you can change how you're thinking and feeling about it. And if you do that, you're going to get better results just because you flipped it around, just because you put yourself into a higher vibe place.
Exactly. And it kind of brings to mind that saying, if you keep doing the same things, you're going to keep getting the same results.
Right.
So if we even change one little thing, there's going to be a shift. It's going to happen. It can't help but happen. So, and if that little shift is a thought, more power to you.
It's amazing how easy it can be. I mean, it can be something just that simple. I had a guest on yesterday. This poor woman had been through hell and back. She had been in the prison system. She had been abused in so many different ways. It was ridiculous. It was almost painful to listen to all the different horrors that she went through in her life. And then somebody taught her about law of attraction. She saw the movie The Secret. Actually, I think she saw it in prison, believe it or not. And shortly after she got out of prison, she got a grant, a $10,000 grant to fund a new business venture for herself, selling art and clothing supplies, artistically created clothing. And I mean, how amazing is that? She made a single shift in her thought process just by adopting this view that I can actually control my life. I can control my experience just by changing my thoughts. She made some shifts and bam, this thing shows up. After all of that.
Exactly. I have to remind myself that every day, because we're always faced with challenges, and it could be a difficult person. It's like, okay, what's this person teaching me? What do I need to take away from this? That I need to learn and change about myself, not them.
Yeah, that's the key. That's the great benefit for me for doing a podcast like this, because I get so many great people bringing so many different perspectives. I've mentioned this many times. And I'll continue to mention it many times because I've gotten so much out of doing this one thing, just getting those different perspectives. Those perspectives have done more for me than anything else I've ever done in my life. And people ask me, how can you do this show 5 days a week? My answer is, how can I not? I get so much out of doing this, and I know listeners do.
You get to pick people's brains and have all these. I mean, there's all these different perspectives coming in. I mean, that's exciting.
It is.
Like I said, my clients teach me. It's a two-way street.
Yeah.
It's not me sitting here preaching to them. It's a give and take. It's an interaction. It's a partnership. Life should be that way.
Well, it becomes that way when you choose to make it that way. And that's what you've done. That's what people who are working with you are doing. They're making that decision. They're deciding to make it that way. Yeah, that's powerful. Now, you also have a program. We haven't talked about your program yet. You've got a 10-week program that you work with people directly. Talk about that. I think you call it Natural Menopause Solution, but talk about that program.
That's right. This is kind of like a business baby I have had for the last 8 years in my heart. Like I said, I've worked for a decade with women going through menopause, and I thought, I need to get this information out there. I need to teach women to do this for themselves. And there's only so many I can work with one-on-one, and that can be really expensive. So I thought if I could take it online, then there was a way to reach a lot more people, change a lot more lives, and do it for less money. So I have literally boiled everything down into 10 weeks. The first week is all about preparing and getting ready. So there's lots in there to get you off to a great start. And then for the 9 weeks following that, we go live every week with the week's lesson, which I will teach live, question and answers live. So they have that support there directly from me. They will have all the tools. They will have access to my testing labs, so that should they want to get things like cortisol tested, it's right there available, and they can do it from their own home. And then I will teach them to read their results and what to do about it. We will absolutely cover mindset. And you can't leave that one out.
No, I don't think so.
And then I'll yeah, and then just teaching them about, the gifts that nature has for us to help us through and ease that transition, but also very much how to protect our body, because it's a very big time in those transition years. Our risks of certain things like cardiovascular disease increase quite substantially. So teaching women how to take that into their hands and be very proactive rather than reactive when something goes wrong. So they have the tools to really look after themselves and not only reduce their symptoms and get rid of the frustrations during this stage, but that set themselves up to be healthy for the rest of their lives. And it's just something very, very close to my heart, and I hope I can help change lives this way.
You mentioned a piece of it very, very quickly, almost skated past it, but I want to really bring it out. This is something that you do live. Like so many of the programs that are out there, you do it on your own pace, and you're interacting with videos and pre-recorded stuff. You're talking about something where they're actually interacting with you as a person. That's not the same thing as these other kinds of programs.
No, this is very personal, and it's designed to be very personal for each woman, so that they feel very supported and they learn. This isn't a do this one thing every week and it will all get better. It's like learning to discern your symptoms and what your body's going on and apply the right things for that path, rather than a one-size-fits-all. And that's why I'm keeping the numbers down, so that I can give them that one-on-one support, but also there'll be a private community where they can, if they can't make the live calls, they can at least post their questions and I can answer them for them.
Yeah, there's something powerful about these live type, I'll call them coaching or group coaching calls, in that, first of all, you're hearing the person who's kind of in the hot seat, so to speak, talking with the speaker, with the leader of the thing, and you can kind of watch how, in this case, you are helping that woman to get to a particular point in her thought process, or to make a shift in her approach about how she deals with her symptomology or whatever it is. And very often, the person who's watching all that can say, "Well, yeah, that's me too," I can pick something up from that because I can just tell what's going on there. And then following that up with the option of also being able to directly interact with you themselves so that each person there, or at least a number of them, can directly ask you questions and tell you what their situation is and be that person kind of in the hot seat. They can get both sides of that. That's a very powerful process going on there.
I think so. And, and to have this community of women in this, really, it's a sacred space, identifying with what each other is going through, but to be able to interact with each other and have that sense of support and community, and to just lift each other up and know they're not alone. Mm-hmm. I think that's healing on its own.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sure that people listening to the program who are dealing with these issues are feeling a degree of healing already just from the stuff that you've been sharing. So thank you for that. But tell people who want to reach out to you specifically to find out about the Natural Menopause Solution Program, or indeed any of the other services that you provide. How do they find you?
The easiest way is to go to a webpage. It's called hotflashnomore.com. Mm-hmm. And if you pop on over there, you can join the wait list for the program for when it opens up. And it also has my phone number and my email there, should you want to contact me for more information.
Okay, terrific. That's terrific. Thank you for sharing that. I'll make sure I'll include in the show notes the link to the webpage as well to make it easy for people to find it.
Thank you so much.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time to be here and to share your knowledge and your story and your inspirational approach to this whole thing. One thing I do want to tell you before we part company for the day, because like everybody else that comes under this program, you are a giver. You are giving. You're trying everything you can in every way you can to give as many women as you possibly can the knowledge, the inspiration, the belief that they really can change. They can take control and change their own experience with this change of life situation. And that often happens in ways that you don't know about. I mean, you do programs like this, you write articles, you do all the things that you do, and there are many people you'll never meet, you'll never see, who benefit from what you're doing, and you don't even see the results. I mean, sometimes you do, and that's great when you get that, but very often you don't get to see it, you don't know what's going on. And I don't think we get appreciated enough for that. So on behalf of those women that you'll never meet, that you'll never see, who you have helped and who you're continuing to help, thank you for what you've been doing, Melissa.
Oh, thank you, Walt. Thanks for the opportunity to share. I really appreciate it.
We appreciate you as well. And we had a little live stream support. So thank you to the live streamers and thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.